Alright, so I wanted to show another conversation that I'm going to set up because it's going to be a little non-conventional. I want basically this garage to be an NPC so that the player can talk to whoever has holed themselves up in there and isn't letting the rest of the characters in. So I went ahead and made a new actor. I called it Remy because there's this character on Mixamo called Remy that if I ever decide to show them, this will be the model that I use for it. And now I'm just going to go into conversations, and we'll go ahead and make a new conversation, and I'll just call it like Remy intro, to note that this is like the first conversation we're going to have with Remy. You know, there may be more, there may not be, we'll see. And so I'm going to make, well, I guess I should set this to be a conversation between the player and Remy, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to make a new node. And this will be like whatever Remy says when you first interact with it. And I'm going to make it say like, go away. I already told you. I'm not opening the door. And then we're going to give our player some opportunity to respond. So actually I was just thinking maybe it'd be funny to let you talk to the zombies and then they would just say the same like gibberish back to you no matter what. It's kind of a fun idea. Maybe I'll do that later. But anyway, if I right click on this and I make a child node, it'll be blue one, which means it's the player talking. And so there's kind of two ways you can deal with player dialogue choices, because there's going to be, I'm going to give the player options here, which I can kind of stub in. So I'll just right click on this parent one again and make another option so you can kind of visualize it. And actually there's a neat way to organize these. If you right click and hit arrange nodes, you can choose vertical or horizontal, and it kind of neatly lays it out for you. So I've got this branching situation. The player will have two dialogue options, and there's two kind of paradigms that I can think of. There's probably a lot more actually, but the two I want to use or talk about is, one is like I can just put exactly what the player's going to say here, like we've never even met before. Can't we talk? And then the next one will be more like, screw you. All right. Now, if we leave it like this, when you talk to the garage, once I have that set up, it'll just display the full text of these options as dialogue choices. So that would be like the first paradigm, I guess I'd say. The other thing you can do, I always think of Mass Effect as a good example of this other way, where if you click on one of the options here, you can change what it's labeled as in the menu text. So the player actually sees the menu text, as opposed to knowing exactly what they're gonna see when you click here or when you choose the option. So like I would summarize this as basically like reason with Remy, or maybe just attempt reason. And then the next one would be like reprimand. And we can see, I don't know if I spelled that right, to be honest. Let's check it out. Is that right? Reprimand. I'm just going to copy that and double check that I spelled it right, because it just looks weird. But I do want to capitalize it. Okay. So I've got this conversation made. We'll see how it looks, and you can kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. But I need to set up this garage door as an NPC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my prefabs, and I'm going to drag a new NPC in. And it's not going to be the child of a model like this, because I mean, I guess I could make it a child of the garage door, but I don't really need to. In fact, I want it to be a child of this NPCs game object just to keep everything organized. And so this one I'm going to rename Remy. Remy in garage? I don't know. Or maybe Remy behind garage door, whatever. And same deal, I don't really think a capsule collider makes a lot of sense here. That's more of matching this humanoid. I'm going to get rid of the capsule collider, and I'm going to instead add a box collider. And we will just position, rather than like adjusting the collider, I'm going to just move the whole game object kind of in the center. And then I guess I will need to adjust it a little bit. So I'll hit Edit Collider and try to get it to just match the garage door a little more closely. And so if you look down these specific axes here, and you press F to focus on the game object or double click it, you can kind of see how close you are. And if I go to the perspective, the orthographic view, you can really see it pretty clearly. So like the garage door is right there. So I could I want it to be sticking out a little bit so that the player doesn't have to run right next to the garage. And I look at this view, I can get if I wanted to make it perfect, I could, but it just doesn't matter. Alright, so that's probably sticking out far enough. The other thing to understand here is that it has to do with the player. So the player has this big circle coming out in front of her, and that is what she has to, if she gets this sphere to intersect with that other trigger we just added, that box collider, that's when it's going to prompt us. And so if we wanted to make the player more have to face who they're talking more specifically, I could shrink this sphere down quite a bit by going into the player character and finding the sphere collider and just changing its radius something like that. Maybe changing its offset to move back a little. But you gotta be careful because let's say I start putting things on the ground, like notes or something, the player would never be able to see them because that sphere, if I go to more of a front view and I focus again, she's not rotated in a way that aligns with the world axes, so I can't get it perfect, but you can see here's the ground, here's the sphere. It's never going to touch stuff on the ground, so I might want to offset this down some by changing the center Y just to make sure that it's gonna hit things on the floor. Alright, so something like that might work. I don't know, we'll see. When I have a problem I'll adjust it more, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how this works. The sphere collider is what's detecting the NPCs and other usable objects. Like if you look at an NPC, it has a usable component on it. So if the sphere touches whatever the usable thing's collider is, it will prompt us. So I'm going to get rid of the isometric view here and go back to perspective and go back to this Remy in garage thing. And I think that's fine, basically. I need to set him up a little more by setting the actor in the conversation. So the conversation is going to be Remy intro. The actor is going to be Remy. I don't want him barking, so I'm just going to uncheck bark on idle here to not use it. And I think that's good for now, so I'll hit play. Maybe I want him to bark. It could be interesting. I could try to set it up like James over there is kind of arguing with Remy, which actually is maybe a good idea. So that might be something I do down in the future, where there's text bubbles coming out of the garage and out of him, and we could make them look like they're arguing. So I get up to Remy and I hit Remy, says go away. I got a typo here. I wanted to say I already told you I'm not opening the door. Maybe I should just fix that while I'm thinking of it. You can see actually while it's running, it kind of helps you understand where you are in this. I think my text change will work while it's running, but we'll find out. I already told you, comma, I'm not opening the door. All right, let's go back to the scene, or the game window. It didn't update in real time. That would have been really crazy, but anyway. So I can attempt reason or I can reprimand. So if I hit attempt reason, I don't even know what just happened there, to be honest. Maybe that's something weird happened because I changed the text. Actually, I notice in my console window, if I click Remy here, it's giving me a null reference exception. So I'm guessing that it doesn't like the fact that this doesn't... I'm trying to reference something that doesn't exist, and it probably has to do with the fact that Remy has no model. So I'll have to look at that myself. So if I attempt to reason, it doesn't do anything. And if I reprimand, it doesn't do anything. So I wonder what's up with that. I'll have to look into it. I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to look up what's wrong with why my dialogue choices aren't showing up, and then I'm going to fix it, and I'll continue the video from there. So I'm just going to pause it. All right, so here's the deal. The reason it's not showing the dialogue is because when you look at the dialogue manager, the default setting here, actually I'm not super sure where this lives. It's going to be in the subtitle settings. So this is kind of set up with the idea that you could have voice acting. And if you have a voice acted game, you may not want to play out, you may not want to write out what the player character's dialogue is, because they're like saying it. And so it's essentially a question of whether or not you want to show the subtitles. And the reason is like, because if they see the dialogue when they click it, then it's like repeating yourself. And I'll show you an example. So I've set up Remy. So remember, Remy has this setup where it's meant to kind of emulate Mass Effect, where rather than listing what I'm gonna say when I click this, I just have this like summary to kind of give the player the character of the response I'll get when I click this. But then when I click it, I can't see what is actually said, so it's not working. When I go up to James, I've set him up the opposite way. So the other paradigm where I'm actually, like, this is literally the dialogue. It's not like a summary of what my character is going to reply with. It's literally the text that I'm saying. So if I already see the text better than outside, that's really what my character is going to say when I click it. It's like you don't need to see the subtitle of me saying it because you've already seen it. And so James just goes on with what he's going to say. So one reason it seems like it's not working with Remy is that if I go to Remy, there is no follow-up. Remy doesn't say anything after these player commands. But if you check out James, oops, I guess I misclicked. If you check out James, here's what the player says, and then he does have follow-up lines, right? So the game, if we're not subtitling these, it thinks that it doesn't need to do anything, and it's basically done with that conversation in the case of Remy. So if you want to use this this approach where you write commands for the menu text, it's probably a good idea to go to my dialog manager again and check out the subtitle settings, and you want to choose show PC subtitles during line. And actually, let's just read this tooltip. Show PC subtitle text while PC speaks a line of dialogue. Well, hopefully this kind of explains it a little bit more, I suppose. So let's see what happens if I check that. and let's see how both instances work. So Remy, I'm going to reprimand him. Oh, it didn't do what I expected it to do. I wonder if I'm missing a component for showing subtitles. And then let's see what James says. So there must be something more to this puzzle. I mean, this is the essence of the problem, but I'm not sure why it's not showing up. It makes me wonder if my UI is just not set up to show what the player says. So I'd have to research that a little more. Alright, so I've just carefully looked through these, and I guess I didn't read this carefully, but if you, oops, let me just make this a little wider so it shows up. So if you see, it does warn me, if skip PC subtitle after response menu below is ticked, it still gets skipped. So sure enough, this actually is the default. So what it's doing by default is skipping what the player character's subtitle is after the response menu is displayed, and I think it's just to solve that problem of, like I said, like it looks like it's repeating itself because you've already read the text when you clicked it, so why do you need to read it again? But if I turn that off, so Remy is going to seem fixed if I reprimand him. Now it finally gives me that kind of Mass Effect style, like, what's it going to do when I click this? Oh, that's what it said. And I'd probably want it to not say player anymore. I'd probably want it, I'd want it to say Commander Shepard or Shay or whatever my character is. And if I go over here to James, now you're going to see this like repeat yourself issue. So if I hit better than outside, it says better than outside. So I guess I'd say if there actually is voice acting, this pacing could work. Like if your player is voiced, this would be okay. But if your player is not voiced, then that feels like it's repeating itself, I guess I'd say. And, you have to read this to select it anyway. So I feel like you can save, like certain games would not voice the main character, either A, to save resources and time and money, right? Because if I have to read this as the player to select it, I don't necessarily need voice acting for it. But also, sometimes like the voices can affect player immersion, right? Like if you don't want your character to sound like whatever the recording artist sounds like, or the actor sounds like, it could be damaging to your immersion. So that could be another reason why you would just elect as a developer not to voice the main character in order to leave the player to imagine how they sound when they click their choices here. So since I am not going to have voice acting, I'm just going to go back and leave this how it was. So I'm just going to uncheck show PC subtitles during line, and I don't really need that checked because I'm just not showing the PC subtitles ever. And then I'm going to go back to Remy, and I'm just going to delete the menu text here, and now you see the actual dialogue that will be said if you choose it. And this is just my personal choice, so you can pick whichever of these styles you prefer. Let's just double check it's working. And so in that case it's fine, and I just need to add what Remy says back to me, so that's on me to continue to add. And so that's working too. Alright, so that should hopefully kind of explain the difference of approaches you can make here. Now there's one issue also I've noticed, like I'm kind of fighting between Remy and James to get it to like pick who I want. And it's partly because the sphere collider on my character here doesn't rotate with the mouse. It's only like rotates with the character model. So I actually have to turn her to get it to select who I want. So I think in order to like prevent this from fighting and like the player thinking they're going to talk to James and instead talking to Remy, I could probably like, well, first of all, if I want to make it look like he's arguing with James, which I kind of like, or James is arguing with Remy, I'm just going to rotate him a little, and maybe I could have him like pounding on the garage door, which I think will be cool. And then if I go back to my NPC Remy in the garage, I'm going to edit that collider. So we'll hit edit collider, and I'm just going to make it like you have to interact with the garage door like over here away from James a little bit. And maybe I could push it back just a little more. There we go. And, you know, you just play tests and see if it's better. Watch other people play and see if they have trouble. So there's Remy, there's James. Hopefully that's a little better. I won't know for sure until I have the animations going. Alright, cool. I'm going to stop this video here.